Okay, good afternoon. I got one instruction, stay in time. So we have to start in time. Welcome everyone, good afternoon. Very good to see you here on a Sunday afternoon in sunny Stockholm. My name is Stefan Willenborg. I work with the World Meteorological Organization in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm the director for hydrology, water and cryosphere. This is the first session out of 3 sessions on monitoring data for peace and security. By the way, Jose, are we online? That's working, yeah? Okay, good. Now we have a slide even, yeah? Monitoring data for peace and security. This session is co-convened by quite a number of colleagues. I would like to point out the person who did actually most of the work, and Jose Castro sitting there from the so-called Young SPC, so the Young Scientific Program Committee members. From the Scientific Program Committee, it was Zadi Ali. He cannot be here today. He's the Director General for Water Supply and Sanitation in Gaza. And at the moment, he has probably one of the most difficult tasks you can think of in keeping water supply and sanitation up and running in Gaza. And we also have the World Youth Parliament for Water, who were supporting this session, and Teti Katongo, unfortunately can also not be with us today, but very good to have Jose here. Furthermore, this session, I would like to say a big thank you for the main partners who were sponsoring and supporting this session and its development. It's the US Geological Survey, it's the USAID, Bureau of Humanitarian Aid, the Red Cross, particularly the Red Cross of the Netherlands, and the World Youth Parliament for Water. I think I mentioned that before. We have 3 sessions. Today is a session on data and monitoring, where we look particularly at the biophysical aspects of monitoring, and the USGS was the main partner in designing the session, also selecting speakers, etc., and we will come to that. Tomorrow we have 2 more sessions, one online, one in person, and then the focus is on other aspects within USAID as well as the World Youth and the Red Cross. We're taking mainly the lead for designing the session. A few more words. This is an interactive session, we hope. So please challenge the speakers, engage in the discussion. We will have a separate block for discussion, but if you have some immediate questions for clarification, we hope to have the time to address them on the spot, and then we hope for more discussion later in the program. Data and monitoring. Allow me a few more words on the framing here. It's critical, I think I preach to the converted, but it's absolutely critical for informing actions, for supporting policy, supporting decision making. That's clear. At WMO, where I work with meteorological organization, it's a lot about protocols and kind of designing the process to collect quality data, but also have, beside the protocols, but also have capacity building on assuring the quality, on designing monitoring networks, how to measure and how to share that globally. And my colleagues in meteorology, but in WMO, we have many meteorologists and quite a number of hydrologists as well. And for meteorologists, data sharing is always, of course, we need to do this. If you want to fly from Paris to Stockholm, you need to know what the weather is in between. Of course, you share your data with your neighboring countries to produce weather maps. In hydrology and water resources, this is much more complicated. It's often politicized and challenging for a number of ways. So it's not only an engineering question in the right data formats and the exchange protocols and all that, but it's also, it requires political willingness and support. And some countries are front runners in that respect. In other countries, it's still treated as a national secret, our data. It's also very expensive. So if cuts are done, then it's often we kind of reduce this monitoring. We decommission a couple of stations to save some funds. Also, we have increasingly cheap sensors, so it's a very innovative part. We come to that with a couple of presentations in the program later. And some people tell me, we have all these satellites, we have all these Earth observation technologies. Why do we need ground measurements? Yeah, yes, but we need them because it's so critical for ground truthing, the Earth observation, for having this reflection of wavelengths of our signal to interpret that in something meaningful for hydrology. But great innovations are happening in this space as well. But it doesn't mean that we can give up our surface observation networks. Also AI. also WMO as well in other centers, there's a really, it's a revolution what's happening at the moment in terms of numerical weather predictions, how they are increasingly challenged by AI developments. There's a revolution going on in hydrology, how AI methodology can really help making quite reasonable, often they outperform actually our biophysical models, flood prediction and water resources modeling, et cetera, et cetera. But also AI models at the end need data. They are very data hungry. And if they're not well informed with the right data, then any beautiful AI setup cannot lead to useful prediction. And the last point I want to make in the framing of this session, the member states of WMO, which is 193 countries around the world, they agreed on an open data policy for WMO back in 2021. It's great to see, and it's mandatory for a lot of meteorological parameters. Hydrological parameters, the states did not agree at this moment. We are working on this very hard to facilitate more data sharing also when it comes to water data. And we hope to expand that commitment of open data also for water and hydrological data sets. So far, the mandatory shared data are all data that helps numerical weather predictions, but not hydrological predictions. So it's really something to massage and maybe build the political momentum also in sessions like this. This was Teddy and I Jose and I wanted to say for the framing of this session. And now it's a real pleasure to invite Dr. Anneliese Blum today. Dr. Anneliese Blum, she's the Deputy Assistant for, wait a minute, too many people, at the Department of Interior. Sorry for this, to say your title correctly, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water Science at the U.S. Department of Interior, and it's very reassuring that she actually comes from a very strong water resources engineering background. So we're looking forward to your keynote. Please, Anneliese.
Thanks so much. As mentioned, I'm honored to serve as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water and Science at the U.S. Department of the Interior, and I'm really thrilled to kick off today's session highlighting open data, open science movement, and to add my voice in support of these important initiatives and policies. I thank SIWI and the session organizers for the invitation to be here today. Across the Department of the Interior and across the Biden-Harris administration, we're diligently seeking collaborative solutions for water conservation and management. The challenges we face today are significant, but collaborating with every community is imperative if we are to secure a sustainable water supply now and for future generations. In 2023, the U.S. rejoined UNESCO and the International Hydrological Program. IHP is UNESCO's scientific cooperative program in hydrological research, water resource management, water education, and capacity building. IHP has published the Open Hydrology Framework to mainstream open science principles into hydrology. The report describes the 6 pillars of open science, which include open data, open source, open publishing, open infrastructure, open education, and open participation. The presentations in this session will provide concrete examples of the 6 pillars of open science in action, which are designed to promote scientific transparency and reproducibility. I encourage the audience to download and review this report. As a bureau within the Department of the Interior, the U.S. Geological Survey adheres to the fundamental science practices and open science, open data policies to ensure that scientifically relevant data obtained through U.S. federal funding are made publicly available at no cost and are in the public domain. USGS data, maps, and science products support land and water resources management in the United States and around the world. And I know firsthand how valuable this data is because I used some of it in my PhD when I was doing research on hydrology. The USGS Earth Resources Observation Science Center, or EROS, operates Landsat 8 and 9 satellites and maintains the overall Landsat program from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. For the past 50 years, Landsat satellites have been mapping the Earth from space. Consistent with open data and open science policies, the USGS Landsat Collection 2 offers over 50 years of consistently processed open access data to the public and has done so since 2008. Landsat satellite program is estimated to provide a yearly economic impact of over $3.45 billion worldwide. Now USGS is working with NASA on Landsat Next, which will be a game changer in terms of new capabilities, such as being super spectral and having more frequent return. All of these new capabilities are driven by extensive assessments of user needs across the federal community. Landsat data from other satellite platforms such as Sentinel, and supporting hydrologic and environmental data available to the global public through open data policies are the backbone of what you'll hear about today. Some examples of the applications of these data include, first, the USGS Famine Early Warning System, FuseNet, a USAID-sponsored activity, is a leader in the development and distribution of key environmental parameters for monitoring drought and providing assessment and forecasts of food insecurity around the world. FuseNet relies on satellite data sets, including Landsat, for drought monitoring and food security analysis. You'll hear more during the session from USGS scientist Gabriel Snee about this. Additionally, the USGS collects and disseminates high-quality hydroclimatic data that are used to evaluate and calibrate process-based models so they can be deployed in regions that lack in situ measurements. For example, researchers freely access and use USGS streamflow data to calibrate numerous land surface models that are applied elsewhere in the world, such as VIC and NOAA. And finally, OpenET is a multi-agency effort to provide irrigation water use information available to farmers, researchers, and resource managers free of charge, to include data, computer models, and accuracy assessment of the results. OpenET has been implemented in the Western US and is now being implemented in Brazil with more requests from other nations. Thanks again for the opportunity to be part of this important session today. I'm looking forward to hearing from other subject matter experts, including the Red Cross and MWater, and all of the discussions to follow. And I believe now I'm passing it back to you. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Annalisa. I think she said all the right things. I hope she's, it's always reassuring if you have somebody high at the administration level really knowing. Of course, everyone knows what he's talking about, but having the right background is really very reassuring. Next speaker would be from the Red Cross, and it's a pleasure to invite Ms. Sheila Chemjo. Sheila just arrived this afternoon from Kenya. She didn't have much sleep, but we're very much looking forward to her presentation, where she looks at open data to support effective and efficient humanitarian action. Please.
Thank you. As mentioned, yes, I work for the Netherlands Red Cross, and I think for this session we'll be looking at how, as humanitarian actors, we use the water data to support effective and humanitarian response. I think looking back, we are currently experiencing very intensified climate crisis, which has directly impacted on the water security, leading to increased water-related risks, whether we talk about too much water or too little water. With these events, which is greatly impacting the availability of water resources and disrupting the community's livelihood, especially around agriculture, irrigation, and leading to food insecurity. And I think we can relate to this very well within the region. We've just come, especially the Horn of Africa, we've come out from El Nino season. We are now, based on the regional forecasts that have been released, we are looking at La Nina season. So this is something we can really resonate to. As the Red Cross across the globe, we have been at the forefront in implementing innovative approaches by leveraging on data, open water data sources, and utilizing forecast information. And based on this, especially the accessible forecast models with the local national meteorological offices, we are able to develop what we call anticipatory reactions based on the agreed trigger, pre-agreed financing with the support of many donors, and having a plan. And with this, most of our national societies, in collaboration with the national agencies, disaster management, and other stakeholders like WFP and FAO, the communities are able to anticipate, prepare, and respond in an event of a disaster. And that doesn't just sound good, of course, just as it is. We've been having a lot of challenges, especially around the forecasting models. This has led, they might not be very accurate, and in event of this, you might find a bit of frustration. Here you have funding, here you have a very good plan, but when it comes to the trigger, it doesn't reach the threshold, meaning that then the communities have experienced what we call a missed opportunity to act before the disaster. So with this, with the advancement of the Early Warning for All initiative, I believe with the support of WMO, we'll be able to improve our forecasting, looking more on the impact-based forecasting. And this is an initiative that we've just opened up through many initiatives like the Water the Heart, and more to come. Another challenge as well is the data silos. So many organizations have very many open data sources, but with restrictions you have to pay, which at the national level, you find they might not afford to pay on monthly basis to get that data, and that really brings a very difficult situation on where you make decisions that can support communities to act in vain. So I'm hoping with better collaboration across, then we'll be able to have open water sources that we can share across, and then make informative decisions in very common platforms that most agencies participate. Another one I would like to...
For the slides.
Sorry?
You need the clicker for the slide?
No, I think it's okay.
the same slide?
Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, we are currently now on the opportunities. You said, do you want to go?
Next slide. Where's the clicker? Oh, it's over there.
This one?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So we had looked at this slide, right? Yes, so when I was talking about anticipatory reactions, thanks, Said. I didn't know you put all the slides you see. So this is what I was talking about, the anticipatory reactions that we've made across the globe, across the Red Cross. So you could see we have around 40.
Can you stay closer to the microphone for the online participants?
I can't also read because of the light. Yeah, so we have around...
Down there as well?
Yeah. Good. So we are around 40 anticipatory reactions across the globe. Then we have around, you can see the data there. That's what I was talking about, pre-agreed anticipatory reaction plans. And these plans have been supported by many partners in terms of funding. So we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Netherlands. We have other ECHO, for example, in some other countries that are supporting this as well. So yes, I also touched a bit on the global forecasting models, which are not performing very well at the moment. With this, most of our national societies across the globe experience what we call missed opportunity, meaning that in an event, they might hit the trigger, but because the focus are not as, we call up the skill of forecasts might not be accurate, meaning that the communities are not able to take the agreed actions, and meaning that the lead time for them to really act before the event of the disaster, whether it's flood or drought, occurs. So they miss the window period to prepare in advance before the disaster occurs. And we are hoping with the advancement of the Water Early Warning for All initiative, especially collaboration with WMO, we'll be looking at more impact-based forecasting and looking at more improved skill of forecast across the national societies we support. The other issue as well had mentioned before is the data silos, where we have fragmented data from various sources, making it very difficult to make a decision and understanding around the water-related risks. So I'm hoping that with the current platforms that we are forming, the technical working groups, the platforms across led by OCHA, then we could be able to look into more consolidated data efforts that, again, consolidate the efforts across most of the communities we support. Yes, looking at opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities that exist that we could improve the effectiveness and response. One is the use of open water data source to strengthen forecasting in all ways, which had said that it could help to increase decision making. For the Netherlands Red Cross, we have a data team that is collaborating now with Deltares, and this collaboration is happening in Ethiopia actually with other organizations, including WMO, whereby we are able to look at monitor community water-related risks. Other platforms that we are currently having collaborations across is the Global Flood Hub, which integrates health information and artificial intelligence. We also have one of the things, again, we are looking at is the real-time data is something that we would like to strengthen further to enable quick decision. And we had mentioned the lead, when we're looking at anticipatory reaction, it's a very short time lead depending on the type of flooding. It could be 5 days, it could be 7 days, it could be. So we have more accurate data, meaning that the communities are able to make decisions and in terms of the agreed actions and undertake. And I would like to give a very good example. Currently, I think within the region where I come from, South Sudan, for example, is currently preparing for flooding. I think I must acknowledge that the OCHA is really doing a very excellent coordination. They are bringing all the actors, including the Red Cross, in one platform. And this is a very good example where the Ministry of Water is sharing real-time data using the gauges. And this is whereby all actors who are sitting in that platform are able to make decisions and inform their communities to prepare. So meaning that if we have real-time data, that means that more people can be reached and more organizations can be able to make decisions to support effective humanitarian actions. Those are other platforms that we collaborate with as well. Global Water Watch, HKV is also one of the organizations within the Dutch organizations that we are looking at more granular data to enable rapid and effective humanitarian actions across the globe. Yes, so I think that's how it is. No, thank you so much, and I will be looking forward to engaging much later.
Okay. We have 1 minute for questions, if there's anything for Sheila. If not, maybe later, then thanks again. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure now to invite the next speaker. It's Dr. Gabriel Senay from the USGS. And Gabriel is, probably many of us looked at Landsat data and the FuseNet information, and I think he has been one of the drivers behind this over the last decades. And looking forward to your presentation. Over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the organizing committee and everybody for coming. So I can use this. Let's see. I think that's the green one. All right, very good. Well, I'll be talking about how we produce open data and open science and share to the world by way of an example. Dr. Bloom mentioned that I will be talking about OpenET and FuseNet. A lot of you are probably familiar with FuseNet. So I will start with this. I'm from USGS. My name is Gabriel Senay. Let's see. I work for USGS, so I gotta have a science slide. So this is the main science slide I have. I'm gonna tell a science story. The rest is cheaper and easier. This hydrologic cycle simplified and borrowed from NASA. So mainly focus on evapotranspiration, how 70% of rainfall that comes into the land surface goes back in the form of evapotranspiration. It's a hydrologic fact, but more important thing is that number, 1 kilogram versus 1,000 kilogram. So for management, that's what we're interested in. So roughly, a rule of thumb, you need 1,000-fold water by mass to produce 1 kilogram of grain. The same thing, 1 pound grain, you need 1,000 pound of. So evapotranspiration happens for 4 months to produce 1 kilogram of grain. So that's why we're worried about, water. So we need a lot of water to grow food around the world. How does this happen? The photosynthesis. That's really the fundamental, the basic science for all this to happen. And the whole food chain depends on photosynthesis, right? From phytoplanktons to grasslands. So if you look at that equation, the two parameters that change is really the water and the glucose. Carbon dioxide and oxygen are about the same around the world. So which means if you change the amount of water, then the amount of glucose or energy we produce varies. That's why we need to monitor the distribution of rainfall or water resource around the world, because that affects our food production. So those fluxes and storage, they change in space and time. So what we monitor is really the variability of this resource water distribution in space and time. If we do that, we can construct water budget equations for management tools, water availability, you can monitor drought, food security. How do we do that? With satellite data and open science. I call them the great equalizer. I just used to say simply satellite data. But data alone is not enough unless it is openly available. So you combine the two, great equalizer, whether you launch satellite or you are a user of data, you have the same quality data around the world to make environmental decisions. So with that, I'm going to show you with an example. Better switch. Can you advance it to the next one? I don't want the laser. Okay. So there are a lot of satellite data available to monitor precipitation, temperature, evapotranspiration, vegetation health. A lot of you are familiar with a lot of parameters we monitor from satellite data. So I'm going to show you an example how open data is available. Some of you, if you are not aware of this, please go and access Climate Engine. Landsat is there, MODIS, a lot of temperature data, rainfall, it's available. You can specify the date, and it just gives you a map of the evapotranspiration, or in this case, rainfall distribution around the world. Look at the distribution. Where is the rainfall? Mainly in the equatorial regions where there's a lot of rain and a lot of energy, which means a lot of photosynthesis, a lot of biomass being produced around the world. Now I'm going to show next, just mapping from Climate Engine from the same year. This is the evapotranspiration we model. So the amount of precipitation I showed you earlier, how it's used around the world. Again, a lot of evapotranspiration in the equatorial where there's a lot of energy. So it's really a mix of available water and energy that drives photosynthesis. So it just even a bigger look like this tells you where biomass is produced around the world. So what is the relationship between evapotranspiration, temperature, and vegetation? This is an example, for example, just a 10-day period in one month in July, where a lot of the world is green, right? So what happens in the Sahara and those low NDVI vegetation performance? Well, there is no vegetation, there is no evaporative cooling. Vegetation transpires a lot of carbon. So now I'm going to show you, if you look at the land surface temperature of the same area, where there is no vegetation, temperature is very high. There is no evaporative cooling. Temperature could be different, like 20, 25 degrees centigrade warmer when you don't have vegetation. So just understanding, having satellite data helps you understand, what's happening in terms of energy and water distribution. So with this kind of information now, I'm going to show you an example of OpenET, where we use Landsat data to monitor water use in the Western US. So Dr. Bloom mentioned, how USGS archives and distributes Landsat data freely available. Now we are using this data for OpenET as the public-private partnership of USGS, NASA, USDA, and all of the universities put together to help rural communities, water managers, policymakers, farmers, just for different stakeholders. This data is available. And what we do is we serve this data for free to the growers, so which means these are all irrigated lands in the Western US. You can zoom in, you can see the center pivots where there is irrigation. You can click on a center pivot and you can get how much water is being used per season at different years. And this is freely available. And people can sign up. There are about 3,000 users already just for the Western US. And this is now being also being picked up by Brazil, OpenET Brazil. And there are a lot of requests around the world. Now I'm going to show you, and then you can sign up and just get data for even just for research purposes. The Farm and Early Warning System Network is more than now just 40 years, I think, since it was established since 2000. The geospatial component is run by USGS. There are 30 countries, about 18 different products. These are the regions and the countries highlighted being monitored. Kind of products we produce, they are updated, some of them daily, some of them every 5 days or 10 days. Vegetation index, evapotranspiration, rainfall, even pond water labels for selected locations in Africa. So the plan is to expand in a lot of places. We identify where the ponds are, we put together a simple water balance model, and we estimate whether the ponds are drying or filling up. These are important for just the movement of cattle and avoid conflict and stuff like that. So FuseNet activities, we do monitor, we produce these graphics, whether it's below normal, above normal, classify, and do some forecasting and report generation. Now I'm going to show you a tool that's also freely available. I think earlier in the day it was mentioned, well, data is available openly. Is it accessible? One way is just to make the tool available for people to just look at their own districts. So again, daily data reports, time series charts are available. Is an example. You come to the FuseNet site, this is what you see. You can look at softwares or data types, and you click on that. This, for example, for Africa, but also you have a lot of data points for Latin America and Central Asia. This is an example of just rainfall distribution map, and there are sub-districts, and you can just get a summary of rainfall distribution and NDVI just by district every day or every 10 days, depending on the type of data available. So that's open data and open distribution. I was just going to call attention to this map. This is the global cropland from USGS, our colleague Tenekabel. So look at the irrigated area and rain-fed systems. Look at where is a lot of irrigation. Of course, in India and the US, China, and some Latin America. What happens in Africa? You hardly see irrigated lands. So that's also where food insecurity is. So but I'm just going to give you the advantage of this kind of monitoring. Look at Sudan, the Gezira, and the Nile Basin, and the Nile Delta, and just the advantage of having irrigation to cope with drought. So you can see there's a lot of, around Gezira district, there's a negative anomaly. It's dry season. But the irrigated areas, actually it's about normal. That's because, well, irrigation is just supplementing. And the same thing if you look at the Nile Delta, in general it's very neutral, whether it's a dry year or not, because of course the water comes from somewhere else, but they're just in the fringes. So we're not only monitoring rain-fed dryland agriculture, but also irrigated areas. There's also a time series charting tool that's available, as I said earlier. For example, in the Gezira, you can click on the district, it gives you an average of how different years, for example, 2015 was one of the lowest in NDVI profile. So it tells you when the season begins, when it ends generally, and which year is the worst. But the irrigated areas and pixel-wise may be fine, but the whole district could be below normal. So if you depend on rain-fed, you are in trouble. If you have an irrigation system, you might be fine. The point in here is this tool is available for decision makers and managers or researchers. So one product FuseNet produces is something like this, and this is, for example, the forecast for June, September this season. This is a situation in Africa, but we have this tool available again for users. So with that, satellite data and open science policy, creates this important opportunity for anybody to use with equal quality around the world. What does open science, open data? Dr. Blum mentioned the 6 elements of what it means open science, open data. And again, OpenET and FuseNet are examples of using multi-scale from a field scale to a basin scale analysis, what we can do. With that, I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues who contribute to this study, and also USAID, FuseNet, OpenET. And these are some of the QR codes if you want to access the FuseNet and OpenET. With that, I thank you.
We thank you, and we have time for a short question, if there is. But we really thank you for making all this available. There's a question from there. Can you speak up? Yeah.
Sure. With all those great map layers that you can get from those different platforms, is it equally easy to get it out into a shapefile, for example, and bring it into whatever analysis mechanism you might already have running?
Yes, these are GeoTIFF files. You can just bring them into an ArcGIS or any other QGIS software. Absolutely, they are ready for that. So we produce both GeoTIFFs, also even graphics for a report.
Okay.
Yeah, and the charts are the JPEG files you can download and just put them. Yeah.
Super. There's one more question. Yes, please.
My question relates to the resolution of your evapotranspiration data set, and if there's an opportunity for a second one, what's the overlaps and the differences to the vapor portal by FAO? Thank you.
So resolutions are about the same, about 1 kilometer global, and vapor is also about 1 kilometer, but the difference is they perform comparably, but vapor, I think, uses the Penman-Montes approach with resistance in the NDVI, so more vegetation parameterization. Our product is based on the thermal. So you can approach from different angle. But generally they converge, especially at an aggregate, spatial, and temporal scale. There might be differences, but that's just a modeling difference. In the product we produce, what we always say is this is the first kind of approximation. It's good in terms of spatial and temporal distribution in a relative sense. If you want an absolute accuracy, get in situ data, local in situ data, and remove the bias. It's just a good practice in hydrology. There could be a bias, let's remove the bias. That I think I encourage having in situ data anyway. So remote sensing is great to cover large areas, but you need to ground it, ground truthing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, particularly for the last point also.
Oh, all right.
We all agree. Good. Hey, the next speaker is Kate French. Kate works for a small but very innovative small enterprise, and she will introduce some innovative ways about water quality monitoring. Please, Kate.
So like was just said, I work for a small water quality startup that's looking at how we can improve water quality monitoring through new technology. And with that view, I'll be focusing today on how innovation can help us build our water quality data from the bottom up. So you may have seen last week a new analysis was published from Greenwood et al. That adjusted the global estimates of population lacking access to safely managed drinking water sources to 4.4 billion, which is about twice what the previous estimates have been, focused entirely on concerns about water quality and specifically E. coli contamination. So Greenwood and her collaborators paired household surveys with the kinds of Earth observational data that we've been talking about, and their analysis found this increased estimate. And we found so much hope in this satellite, airborne, and land-based data with the kind of global coverage that can document human, geographic, and environmental factors and has proved really beneficial in large-scale estimations of water quality. And those are the types of insights that arise from the expansion of data and innovative uses of available data that we have been championing today. But still, direct data about water quality remains limited, especially when we look at for insights that are actionable at smaller scales, national, local, or even household levels. At these scales, workarounds like Earth observational data are insufficient, like was just said, and we're looking for in situ direct data. So it's not enough to look at acute moments in time or individual snapshots, and the ideal will always be regular, reliable water quality monitoring. And many of you will be frustratingly familiar with the kinds of barriers that exist for this kind of monitoring. The monitoring that can produce good quality actionable data. The most obvious is cost, but we also contend with a fundamental lack of equipment for gold standard lab testing. So as Jose likes to highlight, the entire country of Guatemala has only 2 ICP-MSs dedicated to water quality analysis, which is simply insufficient. And this doesn't even touch on how we move samples from remote communities to labs, whether the samples can be kept in a state that will allow for accurate results upon analysis, or whether results will then be returned in time to take action about the contamination. And in the face of these challenges, I'd like to talk about the promises of digitization, decentralization, and innovation to expand access to water quality monitoring and the resulting data. Digitalization supports the move from testing to monitoring, from occasional snapshots to a longer-term understanding of water quality. For this, data management and longitudinal analysis are key, and modern connectivity provides more opportunity than ever. Decentralization, in turn, is a clear way to overcome some of the existing logistical barriers. Concerns about delayed results that can come weeks after the sampling, or sampling transportation can be mitigated if the analysis is done closer to the client sites. Innovations in both technology and management processes underpin all of this, and we're seeing more nascent testing tech than ever, with the goal of making water quality analysis more portable, more affordable, and more accessible. For digitalization, the ability to document water quality results digitally has proven beneficial at all levels of water management, from operators getting results faster to the collation of regional data sets, making water quality data more accessible, which is getting it in people's hands faster and in more comprehensible ways, can help identify risks and bolster their management of their own water resources. At the big picture level of water security, these digital tools and data sharing mean that we should be able to integrate local water quality data into wider databases to identify risks and continue to increase the resolution of our understanding of who lacks access to safely managed drinking water sources. Digitization has many faces. A regional lead might take a picture of a paper report and send it via WhatsApp to an operator, or a district might establish a full integrated dashboard for their water quality management. But as people become more connected, documenting and distributing data as it's created is making management easier. And mWater is a huge example of how this can work, but I'll let them talk about that themselves. As for decentralization, when we look at rural water points in sub-Saharan Africa, labor and transportation costs can account for about 2/3 of the total cost of water testing. And on top of that, the WHO recommends that water samples for microbial testing specifically be stored for no more than 6 hours, meaning communities more than 6 hours away from a lab risk the viability of their samples when going for analysis. And the more remote the water point, the stronger the argument is for decentralization. But that being said, the biggest main argument against decentralization has always been cost. Whether establishing mobile labs or relocating labs to a regional center, the cost of installing sufficient equipment can be untenable. A single ICP-MS can cost $500,000. But we've always been basing this analysis on the assumption that decentralization requires this type of expensive, hard-to-use equipment being installed in far-flung places, when the upfront costs, operational costs, and maintenance can all stack, which lead to models that declare decentralization unfeasible. But this is where we look to innovation. As we advance alternative testing options, decentralization becomes more possible. If testing can be done by citizen scientists, it becomes easier to collect regular data in more places. If tests can be portable, we can overcome the logistic barriers of test storage and transport. And if all of this can be done at a reasonable price, why not move testing closer to the communities that need it? New technologies are the linchpin in the world that I've been describing. As more attention is paid to water quality, the market gap has never been clearer, and companies are stepping in to fill it. We're seeing advances in colorimetry and spectrophotography as they're applied to water quality, but we're also seeing how older technologies, which are often cheaper, really well understood and reliable, can be applied in new ways. Solutions are being miniaturized. They're being adapted to both spot use and continuous monitoring, and they're being made more usable, more durable, or more portable, or more citizen science friendly. And here, I'd like to use the example of Segura's work to show how this can all come together. So we've leveraged an old technology, a form of electrochemical analysis, to develop a portable test for heavy metals, which looks like this. We've based our test strip system on a reapplication of existing analysis techniques that made glucose monitoring portable and accessible to many. Much like blood sugar monitoring for those with diabetes, we saw that spot testing with single-use strips can facilitate regular data collection by lay people for longitudinal results. Our reader plugs right into most smartphones, meaning that anyone with a smartphone can easily create water quality data. Results are available digitally within a few minutes. Going back to my list from earlier, this system eliminates the need for extensive equipment, the risk of results being delayed, and the logistics of moving samples to a central lab. As someone working for Segura, I would love to tell you we're the only people doing this, but it's not true. Many firms have been addressing these same problems of reliability, portability, and accessibility while building out tools for digital data management. They're all, Segura among them, building a world of faster results and fewer logistics in a way that has made me quite optimistic for the future of decentralized and digitized water quality monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I think it was an example that a small company, can be very innovative as well. Is there a question before you run away? Please, Peter Gleich, please.
You showed this example for lead and heavy metals. What are the possibilities for the much more complicated set of chemicals that are of concern?
Yeah, so we've started with heavy metals because the application was the clearest there, but test strips already exist for a number of physical parameters that we're looking at, so pH, nitrates, phosphates, et cetera. Obviously, what we want is to develop the perfect test that can give you results in 3 minutes for E. coli, but that's kind of a bigger process. We think that it is possible, but it's just going to take more time and more experimentation to get there.
Good. One more?
Yeah, I just wanted to know where it has been applied and how.
Yeah, so we started small and local. So this started out of the University of, or out of Oxford, next to the university, not part of it. And so we've tested it locally there for some old buildings that were suspected of having lead. And so we've done our pilots there. And then we're looking to expand to some utility use in the US, where, as some of you may have know the expanding requirements for lead testing are driving a desire for faster and more portable options.
Good, thank you. One more question, then we have to move on, please.
Okay, I was wondering, how did the results from this compare to ICP?
We found the same results. So we're not, right, an ICP is a giant machine that has the very best accuracy that you can look for, but we are accurate down to 1.0 ppb. So in terms of that, we were able to get functionally the same results. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. One more presentation from the room, and a pleasure to invite now the next speaker, Mr. Petri Auturi. I hope I said Autio, sorry, I mispronounced that, about open data to support water security. Please, Petri.
Very good. Thanks very much for everybody organizing and everybody attending. Yes, so I'll talk a little bit from our perspective at mWater, where I'm the head of product, where we are aspiring towards being this public digital good for the world, providing a perpetually free platform for WASH data monitoring, visualization, mapping, and everything to do with that, specifically from this ground truthing perspective. So it is an open access, shared, and sustainable platform for all kinds of WASH data. We've got about 300,000 users inching up to that registered around the world. And fundamentally, we're addressing some of the pain points, or why mWater exists, comes from addressing some of the pain points that came up earlier today. Things like data ending up in silos, things like not having a sustainable mechanism if there are cost barriers and things like that. And fundamentally, whilst we make it very easy for you to choose what data to share with the wider world, and we have a single server cloud architecture, the data that you collect always belongs to you. So it's primarily private to you, and we just make it easy for you to go through with the choice of sharing that data. So I'll talk a couple of examples about open access data, but also wanted to say a few words about what we find is the value of having open standards, shared standards that are sort of functionally available in a platform that many, many people use and where usage is growing. So what we have in terms of things like rural boreholes, water points, are what we call sites, where we provide sort of standard properties, standard data fields that you can collect. So you have your app, you go and map boreholes, anything, hand pumps, whatever, and you just have the basic fields kind of provided to you. So this is a de facto standard because the software provides that. If there are any other questions, any other data that you want to collect, well, that's absolutely possible for you to do, but you can get off the ground and get that standardized data set everywhere in the world just by virtue of having that in the platform. Where we've gotten to beyond that is this water asset standard, open water asset standard, where we have expanded it to cover anything to do with water utilities as well. So you can use the same free platform now to map all of your pipes and tanks and generators and household connections as well. And where we're building, if anybody here is working more on the sanitation side, given that we've got some success with the water asset standard, northwards of 60,000 water systems now operationally using it to some degree or other, we're also now building a sanitation asset standard. So if you go to our website at mwater.co, you'll be able to reach out to us and collaborate with us as we work towards this kind of standard for sanitation assets, because we're already finding people taking the water asset features and bending the functionality of the system a little bit to be able to do wastewater monitoring, map those systems as well. So we really want to cater for that properly. So ultimately, we'd like to see these shared standards and shareable data in a place that continues to be sustained even after a project is complete. So M-Water's there, we're 12 years old now, it's been free this whole duration, and will continue to be free. And yeah, just on the image there, we've got, just in terms of these individual water points, 1.3 million, which is a fair amount in the world at the moment. Here's a glimpse of that water asset standard, by which we mean these sort of different asset classes and asset types. And for each of these, there's sort of out-of-the-box ready, experts thought through fields, data fields, and options. So you can kind of choose, you don't have to map them all, you don't have to fill them all, but you also don't have to invent the same thing from scratch. And the same sort of applies to us in our thinking of building management information systems, and your wash data monitoring in any way. You don't have to reinvent the system from scratch. We've seen many custom systems be developed and fit the purpose, certainly for a time, but then funding runs out, requirements change, maintenance needs change, and the sort of system falls out of use. Whereas what we aspire to provide with M-Water is just a platform that's just there as much as any of the standard digital tools that you might be using on a daily, weekly basis. One of the examples we have is this water basin mapping done in the Mara region, transboundary river in Kenya and Tanzania. It supports many sectors where data was gathered some years ago to facilitate this basin-wide water allocation plan. This was all funded by USAID and led to management actions. And one sort of enduring and key result was a creation of a permitting system, so based on real data, so that the big extractors, whether that was mining companies or hotels, were actually being able to be charged the more correct amount. So giving greater revenue opportunities through that. But I think this map that flashes over there also speaks to the point made at the beginning about it's all well and good. You can map one side, the Tanzanian side of the border, and have the basin map there. But what about the Kenyan side? What about the other side? We can make the digital technology side as frictionless as we can, but there's still that political, diplomatic, transboundary side that needs to be worked on. So this is I think there's a case study of this online, and then. Next level is this, as I spoke about, that water asset standard. We've got an increasing amount of these local government-owned water utilities in Indonesia adopting M-Water. And here we're not maybe talking about open access data. We're certainly not expecting you to make all your household connections and pipes public to the world. But it is part of that free offering. And we democratize the tools, so you don't need an engineer expert to sort of get this level of use from the platform. But what's great about this example in the water utility is that it's because we, through our model, sort of establish these de facto operational analytics dashboards and management information systems that real practitioners use, we also make it very easy for you to bring data out and take it somewhere else if you want, but also bring it in. So here in this example, we've got, shape files have been imported into M-Water, so you can overlay the asset mapping that you've already done with various kind of disaster risk areas of flooding or mudslides. So that's already nice because you've got the utility people, the demand and the functionality and the usage is coming from the people actually doing it. And then where it's going next is just in those danger areas, bringing in sensor data to provide this early warning system. So having this kind of open platform allows you to bring these integrations and take it to the level that makes sense for you. So this is from the USAID-funded iWash Tangguh work in Indonesia, and there's some more interviews from these staff members of these water utilities if you want to read about their experiences with M-Water and so on. And just a few closing points then. Reiterating that point of using a platform that lasts and standards that work help you be more proactive. We've got a number of case studies on our website about disaster response and a little bit about just sort of general sustained use of the platform to be able to do better resource management. I already spoke a little bit about what we, of course, we would be biased, but sort of feel the benefit is from a system or multiple systems that just exist where you don't have to invent the same things over and over again. You can customize mWater, especially if you collaborate with us directly, to a very, very high degree. And we also see delightfully sort of upskilling users with transferable skills. If it's a platform, we see people using mWater at one organization, knowing the skills, taking it to another organization where they can promote it or it's already in use and they get to make sense of that. So there seems to be this sort of, you don't have to learn this very specialized platform each time. You can build on the knowledge you have. And because almost everything in the platform exists because somebody in the world has needed it and funded us to develop it, we get new features, the whole platform improves all the time, and it's not just me in Finland imagining what it would be or the rest of our programming team somewhere. It's actually coming from real world needs. So that's very delightful to be able to cater for that. Yeah, so I mentioned the work with us on the sanitation standard, and we're also working on this library of watershed data for maps and maybe other, some of these great satellite layers that we could just bring it a bit more easily into the platform and make it even more democratic that way. So thank you.
Thank you, Petri. A lot of innovations happening. Is there a question? No, we're all overwhelmed for the possibilities, so thanks again.
Yeah, no worries.
This was very useful. We talked about water quantity data, water quality data, sanitation, wastewater, and so on, and now we move on to water conflict data. And it's a new dimension, if I may say so. And we have two abstracts now. Unfortunately, both have to be presented online, and you probably submitted also abstracts that were involved in it. It's the Stockholm Water Week, and it's a super competitive process. Hundreds of abstracts are submitted, and two were selected only for this session. And therefore, it's really a pleasure now to invite Morgan Shimabaku. Morgan, are you there? You were online before?
Yes.
Yes, we hear your voice. But we have to click from here, I believe.
One slide.
One second, we still need to see a slide. Colleagues on the technique, can you help us? Now we have time for a question. It's hanging. Or should she better share her screen?
I can share.
Could you give her permission? Oh. That's the slide. Please, Morgan, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. Today, I'm going to be talking about the water conflict chronology. It is the largest open source database of water-related conflict in the world. I work for the Pacific Institute, and we are a nonprofit organization based in the United States. And we make this database freely available to help raise awareness around the issue and to support researchers, peacekeeping organizations, policymakers to identify root causes and solutions to help mitigate conflicts before they start. Pacific Institute's 2030 goal is to catalyze the transformation to water resilience in the face of climate change. And we cannot achieve that goal so long as water-related conflict continues to increase around the world, making this project a vital part of our work. The entries in our database are curated from news sites and other conflict databases, books, historical accounts, and social media posts. We categorize conflicts under three different groups. As a trigger, where disputes over water resources, access to water, pressures from drought, and competition are cause of conflict. Casualty, where water system staff or water resources are harmed, killed, damaged, or destroyed in a conflict that may start for other reasons. And as a weapon, where water or water systems are used to cause harm, such as by poisoning a drinking water source or by destroying a dam to intentionally cause flooding. Our data set extends back 4,500 years with over 1,900 entries. This shows that water has been part of conflict throughout human history, which reflects its vital importance for human health, well-being, economic prosperity, and cultural importance. Last week, we posted a major update to the database, adding more than 300 new instances, with the majority of those coming from 2023. Now the database is updated through the end of last year. The map that you're looking at here shows events in red in the database and highlights a disturbing increase in the number of water-related conflict events between 2022 and 2023. The total number of events per year have been increasing rapidly in recent years in all three categories: trigger, casualty, and weapon. And we see a sharp uptick in year over year within the last decade. 2023 incidents exceeded those in 2022 by 50%. There were 347 in 2023 versus 231 in 2022. Also, 2022 showed a major increase over 2021. We believe that water conflict is on the rise in the past few years because of a couple factors. One, ongoing conflicts in Russia and Ukraine, and the conflict as well between Israel and Palestine have contributed a significant number of events where water and water systems were targeted as weapons. Notably, in Israel and Palestine, not all but much of the water-related violence has been occurring in the West Bank, where Israeli groups are attacking and destroying Palestinian-owned land and infrastructure. Even more, intrastate or subnational conflicts all over the world are on the rise. These are often triggered by water scarcity, lack of equitable access to safe water, and pressure on limited resources from industry and population growth. 62% of the events in 2023 are attributed to subnational level, and only 38% are between two or more nations. Drought in some places, exacerbated by climate change, also contributes to insufficient and poor water quality, poor water supplies. This can be like a fuel on fire, igniting conflict between different groups who are already struggling with water security. Our newest update shows that water-related conflict incidents are not limited to one region in the world. It was found in Western Africa, which is the Middle East, which is also known as the Middle East, Southern Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, but there were events reported widely in other regions as well. In closing, I'd like to offer two messages. First, water-related violent conflict is on the rise in almost every part of the world, and solutions are urgently needed to mitigate and prevent these events. And second, resources like the Water Conflict Chronology can help raise awareness about water-related violent conflict and can be used to help identify and design solutions to help enhance community resilience and prevent conflict and bring peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Such a pity that you can't be here with us today. Is there a question? There's a question here in the front. Can we have a microphone?
Yes. I want to ask how big a conflict should be to be classified as a conflict. So, for example, if there's a conflict between two cities, or if there's a conflict within a city, so like within a city, if it would classify as a conflict or not?
Yes, thank you. We classify conflicts based on a couple of factors. One, water has to be involved, as I explained, either as a trigger, a casualty, or a weapon. And two, there must be some form of violence associated with the event. So, but by those criteria, it's incidents very small up to very large. Everything from two single individuals who are fighting over a single water source and one harms or even kills the other person, up to the level of international conflict over a river basin that causes two armies to get involved. So wide range of conflict sizes.
There's one more question, please.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. I was just wondering if you could clarify on the proportion of conflicts that arise from trigger versus casualty versus weapon. Thank you.
Absolutely. We see most of the conflicts in our database are either trigger or casualty. Those are split fairly evenly. And then weapon is a much smaller proportion. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a much smaller proportion than the other two.
Okay, clear. Morgan, please stay online. We will have a general discussion after one more presentation. And it's now finally the last presentation for today before we really get into the discussion. It's Mr. Tom Doyle. Tom, are you online? About data for water resilience?
Yeah.
Super. Do you have slides?
I think I've just got one holding slide, so I don't need anyone to click, but yeah, there is one.
Good, perfect, over.
Good afternoon, everyone, and sorry I can't be there in person today as well. It'd be great to listen into some of the session speakers so far. I'm Tom Doyle from AREP, and really excited to share some of the insights from one of the initiatives that we've been working on with the Open Data Institute and Microsoft, which is the Water Resilience Peer Learning Network. It's one of many peer learning networks that's been established to support open data and data sharing around particular challenge areas, and this one focuses specifically on climate and water resilience in the Global South. So this initial cohort of the Water Resilience Peer Learning Network included a diverse group of organisations that you can see from the logos on the bottom of the slide there, from urban development networks and the Global Partnership on AI through to sort of gender-focused data alliances and climate adaptation specialists, all working together to enhance data practices and drive climate resilience in the Global South. So what does the network actually do? Essentially, it sort of brings together organisations to improve how they use and share data. So it was a 12-week programme in which participating organisations dived deep into key topics like data stewardship, governance, and the benefits of data sharing, with the goal to equip these organisations with the tools and knowledge that they need to tackle climate and water-related challenges more effectively. Participating organisations engaged in practical activities like developing use cases and benefit cases, identifying key data sets and stakeholders, and planning how to initiate data sharing ecosystems, and also learned from other participating organisations and their own experiences from other parts of the network. So we at AREP shared some of our learnings from developing the open source city water resilience approach with SIWI and partners, and using data or open data to assess things like the risk of urban flooding through our Global Sponge Cities snapshot. And throughout the programme, we explored with participants what types of climate and water-related data they use, the challenges they face, from sort of data quality and data privacy, through to socio-technical and political barriers, and understanding how they engage with different stakeholders like governments, NGOs, and industry. In terms of sort of how this ties in with the themes of this week, and specifically sort of data and monitoring for peace and security, that's sort of exactly what the peer learning network is all about, and is designed to do, really promoting collaborative data practices which are essential to addressing water challenges and ensuring sustainable management of water resources. The network has had some sort of real tangible outcomes. They're directly contributing to the SDGs, particularly SDG 6, 13 and 17 around partnerships. And participants in the programme have improved their sort of capacity for data management and data sharing. They designed use cases that show the real benefits of data sharing and identified key data sets and stakeholders critical to their success. I think one of the most exciting outcomes is that many of those who participated have already begun to initiate data sharing ecosystems in their own spheres, which will help them to address climate and water-related challenges more effectively. And we also learned some valuable lessons along the way, like the importance of cross-sectoral collaboration, and the need for capacity building around data literacy, and of course engaging in a meaningful way with communities is crucial to ensuring that solutions are sort of inclusive and equitable. Very briefly, just looking ahead, we're planning to expand the reach of the peer learning network. We want to bring in more organisations into the fold, deepen the partnerships and continue to enhance education around data literacy. And our aim is to ensure that more organisations are equipped to manage and share data effectively in order to have a lasting impact on water resilience and climate action. So thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about this initiative. If you'd like to learn more about the peer learning network and how you can participate, then please do get in touch with myself or one of my colleagues in Stockholm this week from AREP. And I'm really excited to continue the important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Please also stay online. And now we enter into the interactive discussion, which will be moderated by Dr. Homero Martinez. Homero, where are you? Coming? Please. And I would like to invite everyone who was speaking before, Tom and Morgan online, please. Petri, Kate, Gabriel, Sheila, and Anneliese, if you want, you're most welcome. Come on stage. It's colleagues will now challenge you with a couple of difficult questions, and over to the moderator. Please. Here you have a microphone.
Testing. Thank you, everyone. Just issuing one correction, not doctor, just Mr. Homero Martinez. Does anyone in the room have anything to ask the group?
I thought I would put my colleagues on the spot, and I would like to ask Gabriel and Petri maybe more specifically about the financial sustainability of open data, and because keeping the infrastructure and distribution of data does cost money and staff and all that. So, thoughts on that? Thank you.
I guess you're right. When we say free data, somebody's paying. In this case, USAID is paying, for example, the FuseNet. So there's a computing cost. So the data may be free, but synthesizing, processing the data, that still somebody has to, there is a labor involved. But the idea is we make this data available. Also countries, they will have enough expertise to use the data. That's why I really pre-process data. So I think from the US side, from the provider side, I would say it's affordable. The US government is willingly doing this. Also, some of it's for humanitarian assistance, also from different policy issues. But the countries, they should have the capacity to process. That's why we pre-process the data. In that case, it's, I think, affordable because already pre-processed GOT files are available to be used immediately. From the, I guess, the OpenET as well, there is a model. So we produce the raw data now or semi-processed data, water use data available. There are going to be experts and consultants making derived products out of it, and they may make business out of it. So they would work with growers who would be willing to pay them. So I think we're talking about different stages. So I think the product we produce now, I would say it's affordable and sustainable.
To me as well, sure. We are great beneficiaries of the contemporary cloud architecture, really, because we have a single server and a single database where all the data is encrypted, but the unit costs are really, really tiny. So to provide this database and platform for the world to use, I suppose the monthly costs are something of the order of what it would cost to send someone to map one community. Something like that. So we have, our CTO was just discussing about how we have 120 million images, 41 terabytes, providing that, that's all been for free. And it's not going to be the cost of keeping the platform running. We keep our costs low and lean. We're a small team as well, but that's worked for 12 years, and I don't see the unit costs being a problem, even if we grow 10 times bigger or 100 times.
Great, thank you. Anyone else in the room?
Hi, my question is partially linked and influenced by the first question, financial sustainability. But the sustainability of open source data or a platform is also, I think, linked to the proper use of it. So my question is, what do you think, the open source data that is available at this moment, are we properly extracting it, or the use of it is yet to explore or untapped? What do you think?
For me, I can say a few words, but that's a huge question for us because given the platform is so open-ended in how people use it, we see everything from use that if we look at it, we're a little bit frustrated by, like you're really not making the most of these opportunities, all the way up to great national level management information systems like RUMIS in Uganda, Papua New Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, many places. Of course, in our vision, we get to help WASH sector professionalize, and when we get involved ourselves in large larger projects. So that's a small fraction of the use of mWater, and there undoubtedly are challenges, and we're not there yet overall in terms of what could be done. But there are, of course, nudges that in terms of platform design, giving templates, giving guidance, giving good examples and inspiring examples can get a little of the way there, but certainly not there yet.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We heard today presentation on monitoring and data on water quantity, water quality, the status of water infrastructure, but also some presentation on water use. We talk about evapotranspiration, and also on some socioeconomic impact conflicts. Do you see any efforts or opportunities to integrate these data sets that look at different aspects of water?
Again, sure. I've certainly, there's absolutely, hey Enrico, I'm sure we've met before. So there's absolutely huge opportunity there in terms of the platform design. Of course, we try and make it very easy for you to bring in data from elsewhere and to bring it out of mWater. So how you use it. If you just want to use mWater, for example, as your data collection tool or layer, and then you have your other ArcGIS, QGIS, where you're doing the more in-depth analysis, we certainly don't want that to be a barrier. So I think the potential there is absolutely huge. Skills are maybe the biggest barrier I see, but sort of always with my hat of developing the platform, developing the product, what we can do is try and lower those barriers and just make it as easy as possible from the user side to do that. And where we get to, where I sort of, on my work, where the rubber gets to hit the road is in sort of individual partnerships where we build these customized management information systems on top of the mWater infrastructure, where we can then go the extra mile and add those customizations or build those integration pipelines. I'm sure that's happening in many, many cases around the world as well, and there's, the sky's the limit, but I only see a fraction of the actual use cases of mWater, which is kind of great about it. There's tons and tons.
I think, I can add to that. Data integration is just, where you get the most of the value. For example, we produce evapotranspiration data, but you need to get like another data layer, like irrigation map. And then so you can combine the two, you can get volumetric water use per basin. And this is what we do, but also a lot of users, as they combine land cover data with evapotranspiration data, and they look at also stream flow data. So there is a lot of data integration to make the most out of it. It's happening actually.
And I want to turn it over to Morgan. I see her hand is up.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. I just wanted to add that we really hope that our conflict database can be combined with other data sets to better understand and hopefully mitigate and prevent water-related violent conflict. I think especially what comes to mind, of course, is events where water was a trigger, perhaps. So looking at where drought and water scarcity are contributing to extreme tensions over water access, or where just inequitable water access. So where people do not have sufficient safe water and sanitation, there are a lot of conflicts in our database that show these contribute to civil unrest that can turn very violent in lots of different parts of the world. So those are just two examples, and it's something that we at Pacific Institute are interested in doing more work on, and we'd love to discuss with others and on partnerships and ways to advance that sort of collaboration and use of data.
Thank you all. Any other answers from our panel? If not, I'll move on.
One quick question for Morgan for Pacific Institute. Difficult question, but I was looking at the database, and a lot of the events come from news reports. So I'm curious and news isn't always accurate. I'm curious what sort of fact checking does Pacific Institute do to verify or to try to triangulate make sure there's no fake news coming in your database.
Yeah, it's a very fair question. At this point, our best approach, we do depend on news outlets, and if we learn that a conflict event if a news report was inaccurate, we would remove that. However, we're also looking at agency reports. The United Nations has OCHA reports and others, many that are coming out. Increasingly, there's actually a lot of, with some of the more events like attacks on infrastructure, you can get satellite imagery, and people are posting satellite imagery. Of course, those can be faked. I'm not oblivious to that, but yeah, it's sort of that kind of work of looking at, is this reported by multiple sources? What's the level of how much research does that particular source do to verify their information? So we are dependent on others of reporting these things accurately, but we do our best to review the sources and ensure that they are dependable as much as any source can be.
May I have a follow-up question? I'm sure you're doing your best, and I'm sure it's very difficult to verify all the data, but you also demonstrated a clear trend of an increase of water-related conflicts, and kind of the pressure on water resources increasing. Therefore, I intend to believe you very much. But on the other hand, the access to data, the access to water conflicts, the way they are reported, also changed a lot over the last year. So how much can you really kind of make a trend that there's a clear increase of water-related conflicts?
Absolutely.
How firm is that statement, and how can you justify that? Again, I believe you, and I really trust that you do yourself. I don't want to. It's easy to criticize, but I just want to hear how you can make those statements about trends. Over.
Yes. So my colleagues and I are very aware that increasing access to data is making it much easier to collect information, accurate or not. And so one thing that we do is really try to hone in on looking at more recent data trends, or more recent trends in our data set. So while our database goes back 4,500 years, we only do our trend analysis over the past 20 years or so, when we believe that data availability has been more reliable. And a few other things indicate to us that these trends are real, like you noted. There's a lot of evidence that water insecurity is increasing and not getting better in many places, so that supports it. There's also been sort of, you can track the increase in the different types of conflicts, and those track with what you would expect when you see drought in certain places. You're seeing triggers increase. When you're seeing wars and conflicts over other issues, you see those casualties ticking up. So there's independent sort of ways that we verify our trends, and we do believe they're real. But there always is that question of whether just data availability is better. So I think we're still working on that and trying to like parse out how much is that real and how much is it data availability.
Thank you, Morgan. And we do have a question online first. What are some of the methods used to generate data from sub-Saharan Africa?
Is that question for me?
I think it's for the full panel, whoever wants to respond.
Well, satellite data.
or ground truthing with various systems.
Yeah. Can you be specific? Is this about in situ data or satellite data, or
it doesn't get that specific, sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
if you want to put it in the chat, please.
I get that. Yeah, I have started. So we use a combination of data, whatever we can. I guess we can. For example, rainfall data. Satellite gives you a first estimate. Rainfall rate is an approximate. So what USGS Santa Barbara group does is collect in situ data from different countries. We buy actually from the Met Agency, and that will improve the accuracy of satellite data. So we work with the different government countries to integrate and bias correct rainfall data, for example. So I'm sure there are examples like this, but a lot of large area coverage, we depend on satellite data.
Excellent, thank you. And just a reminder, you can put questions in the chat and we can read them out to the group.
Hi, Brian Eiler from the Stimson Center. My question is for the speaker from the Red Cross. I imagine that the traditional kind of response mechanism to the Red Cross is something like governments picking up the phone and calling for need, or journalists on the ground finding things that are happening, or NGOs drawing attention to something. Now there are new kind of disruptive technologies, social media for one, and then Earth observation. So just could you comment a bit on whether and how some of the data and technologies that have been talked about on this panel are changing the way that your organization is responding to things happening on the ground, and if it's changing the way you're distributing resources?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, the use of availability of data especially has informed a lot about on our effectiveness of response, and especially looking at the timeliness in terms of how we utilize the information. And as I'd mentioned before, we're really shifting from reactive to more proactive response, and looking more into where we talked about anticipatory reactions, where we're able to act ahead of the disaster within the window period. And most of the forecasting models we've been using a lot is the GLOFARS for quite some time. But now with the collaboration of WMO, we're hoping that we could advance more to more the regional and national forecast. And also the other one is within that, we are also really able to do the early response, whereby based on the data available and collaborating with especially the national meteorological offices and the water directorate, you're able to get the real-time data in terms of the levels of water. We're able to inform the communities to act early, for example, evacuate. Using the same information we can issue from the advisories that we get from the producers, then we're able to issue early warning, for example, for them to be able to prepare before the disaster. So I can say for the last few years, the effectiveness in terms of the response has really reduced in terms of timeliness before. And we really consider, we give it less than 72 hours where you're able to do a rapid response based on the assessments you do, then it forms your operation. So it's indeed the open data source has really been a big game changer within the humanitarian field. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions.
Thanks. Kirsten Oliver from Wild Trust in South Africa. It's actually just a response maybe to the question that was online about collection of data in sub-Saharan Africa. I actually picked up this little booklet from the IWMI, a working paper, Digital Innovation and Citizen Science to Enhance Water Quality Monitoring in Developing Countries. And it's written by, or being worked on by 3 South Africans that I'm quite familiar with, and it's quite innovative. It might be worth just picking a copy up if you're interested in data collection in sub-Saharan Africa. A lot of it's crowdsourced citizen science data collection. Thanks.
Hello, this is Christoph Schmand from the EU Water Facility. What do you think about decision support systems? So translating the wonderful array of data that you represent into actionable information that a investor or policymaker or utility manager can implement.
Well, a few words to
Thank
that.
you.
Sure. That's a great question. On the software side, there's a number of things that I think can be done, and we do, which is things like indicators. So let's say you collect a lot of data in a survey, and in MWater we have the mechanism to kind of synthesize that, set up rules so that you get a red, amber, green kind of traffic light for that, and have that sitting in front of the person making the decision. I think that on the software side, if you get that, instead of having somebody busy having to sift through all the raw data, just help them get that extra step, that can be really powerful. I think where we end up with them, what often is that people, the eyeballs of the people who are able to make those decisions at least get to have a platform. We're not trying to be the most cutting edge in terms of fancy AI or great things. I think the angle that we want to take, at least, is to be able to, bring the sort of more simple, more straightforward, more actionable things and do certain things around that. And nonetheless, I often see it takes time. It takes, sufficient buy-in. Can take a long time to get on board, even if you see that powerful demos, nice visuals can sometimes trigger it, and I think we're able to deliver that, but sometimes it just takes a lot of work, a lot of time, embedded, dedicated people to really kind of get to some kind of triggering point, and then it happens. So it's, even with all the great tech, it's not so simple.
Yeah, I want to add what the USAID does with the FuseNet. So when we do like food insecurity alerts, so they follow what they call convergence of evidence. So satellite data is really one component of it. There is a field collection about nutrition and prices, stuff like that. So you bring them all together so that there is more confidence. So one of them is really convergence of evidence, field data and also satellite data. So that makes it easier for decision makers to weigh in the value of the product. So.
I can speak a little bit about like the operator scale of things. So I spent last year doing research on how water quality data gets communicated to the people that are going to use it, usually at the operator level or individual household level. And one of the things that I found was that when you try to turn data into, like you have the support to take action, sometimes that process can introduce significant bias. So when you're looking at individual water points in areas that a borehole is the best option, and otherwise somebody might go to surface water, it can influence how you're supporting decisions if you want the end outcome to be people continue to use the borehole. And so I talked with operators who would very explicitly say that even when they had regular data that said that there were certain chemical contaminants in their borehole, they would only ever say it was unsafe and shut it down if it was microbially contaminated. And that was because they wanted people to keep using their borehole. And so the support that they were giving to households to make decisions was very much influenced by the outcome that they wanted and not necessarily what the data might have said more objectively.
And thank you to our panelists. I want to turn it back over to our hosts. I think we need to close out the session now, and thank you everyone for your questions.
Great, thank you. I won't take too much of your time now, just to give some quick closing remarks. We really hope the tone of this session will be very positive, not just techno-positive. I don't think anyone in the panel would say that technology is the only thing that's going to solve all these issues. But we do hope that you get a positive sense that there are tools out there that can accelerate and solutions to achieve SDG 6, which 2030 is just around the corner. And I wanted to kind of retake on that last question, because that connects to our second session. So, the session of the seminar was seminar 1 out of 3. The second of the 3 sessions is related on, now that we have all these data products, how do we develop decisions? The third of the sessions, which will be convened online by the Red Cross, then we'll focus on how do we communicate those sessions. So we're going to have the 3 processes: data production, decision making, and then communication of the results. So yeah, please come along to the sessions as well. And yeah, thank you for your questions and for your time today. Thank you.